Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. Broadcasting live presents Two Guys and a Bible with Don Preston and William Bell. Join us each week at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central as we bring you exciting, sound, challenging, and comforting messages regarding the end times. Thank you for tuning in today. Don Preston is the founder of Preterist Research Institute, or PRI. Don is a prolific author, having written and published 19 books, a host of audio and DVD studies, and is a debater and defender of the full preterist view. His websites are BibleProphecy.com, Eschatology.org, and DonKPreston.com. William Bell is the founder of AllThingsFulfilled.com Ministries and has a website bearing the same name, and has authored 3 books, audios, and DVDs. He has published hundreds of articles and recordings. And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two Guys and a Bible broadcast with Don Preston and William Bell. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Two Guys and a Bible right here on Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. I am William Bell, and with me is my illustrious co-host, Dr. Don Preston. We are delighted to be with you today. Looking forward to another great study, and that will be upcoming just very shortly. But as usual, we try to get a few announcements out of the way. And of course, I know Don's going to really rag me about recording that opener once again, and I do have it on my to-do list. So let me tell you right now that he has 34 books that he's published so far, and another 34 in the hopper. But we are definitely looking forward to getting it updated and letting people know, the material that is out there. And believe it or not, it's got to be updated because I've written one more book.
That's right. And
soon to be published, but nevertheless, it's there, and Don wrote a great foreword for it. But we're excited about that. There's some exciting things going on, and we'll be telling you about them shortly. We look forward to taking another trip to Ghana here just next week. So we're getting all of that lined up and ready to go, making sure we got our malaria pills and all those kind of things. But there's some other great things that are happening, and we want to hear about them. So, Don, why don't you share a few things that you've got going, if you will?
Well, I actually started to print off about 7 or 8 emails that I've gotten since Sunday, I guess, that have just been absolutely remarkable emails. 2 or 3 of them, I've forgotten exactly how many, but 2 or 3 of them have been emails from individuals that have been watching my videos. They have been dispensationalists most of their lives. And they said that the more they watched, the more they listened, the more they were bothered, the more they were troubled, the more they were frustrated. And by frustrated, what they meant by that was they could not find a way to refute what I was presenting. And over a period of time, it just slowly dawned on them, it grew on them, that the reason they couldn't refute it is because their dispensationalism was wrong. It wasn't because Preston was wrong or what he was presenting was wrong. It was because the paradigm in which they had been raised and taught and indoctrinated could not answer the things that were being presented. And so, like I said, that was 2 or 3, of the emails that I had received. The others were from individuals that were, and by the way, all of these individuals that I heard from, 6 or 7 different people, were from people I'd never heard from before. I did not recognize their names when I received their emails. I had no clue who they were, but they let me know that they had been watching my videos in one instance for over 5 years, and had just slowly begun to realize that what was being presented is the truth. and every one of the 6 or 7 emails that I received was expressing profound appreciation for the liberating nature of God's truth. And the reality that discovering covenant eschatology had made their faith deeper, had made their faith more joyous, had made their faith more liberated than they had ever felt in their entire life. Now, naturally, 3 or 4 of them had more follow-up questions, and they said, could you please do a video on this or that or the other to help clarify some of the things that I've still got questions about? And, you know, one particular individual asked if I would do some videos on the resurrection, and I'm thinking, I thought you said you had watched my videos for the last several years. I did like 350 or 400 videos on 1 Corinthians 15.
That's true.
Yeah. So, anyway, you know, they asked about several things that I had already done videos on, and so I've got to direct them to those videos so that they can spend their time watching those past series. So it's been a very, very rewarding week. The testimonials that I have received have just been so humbling. They've been so exhilarating. They've been so wonderful to read the testimonials about what covenant eschatology has done for them in their own personal lives. So, but anyway, that's enough of me. You need to tell us, William, about your upcoming trip. You need to tell us very quickly about the plans, about some of the events that are going to take place. You and I were sharing off air just before we came on air some extremely exciting news. So share that with the audience so that they can rejoice with us in what's happening.
All right. Well, that was great news that you were expressing, and to see that people have been listening for 5 years and studying along just shows you how powerful these YouTube channels are in their ability to continue to teach and to give people an opportunity to go there and study and learn at any time. We are excited because we have an opportunity that's been afforded us to go back to Ghana, West Africa. And Leora and I will be leaving on Monday and arriving on Tuesday. And around 8 p.m., Lord willing, everything is safe. Please, we do ask sincerely for your prayers for safe travel and that we get through all of the COVID tests and everything else that's required these days in order to do that. But when we land, they've already made some pretty nice arrangements in terms of, you know, we have a guy that's going to pick us up from the airport. He's going to be our driver throughout the time that we're in the first town as well as in Accra, so that we don't have to worry about trying to, you know, call a new cab or tra-tra every time we need to go somewhere. And that is good within itself. And the guy's already called me about 2 or 3 times, just telling me, you know, that you got that taken care of. So we're good, you know, for at least 2 of the places that we're going to be. We've got the hotel picked out and everything. But the other side of that is the first time we're going to get started working on the 30th, you know, after we've slept a little bit. So we start immediately on the 30th, and we'll go 5 days of working in the community doing, you know, personal evangelism. He said we'll do some street preaching. That'll be new to me.
Yeah.
And I don't have a megaphone, so at any rate, so we'll do.
You don't need one.
Yeah, I know. And of course, you know, some leadership training. One of the preachers there who is a teacher in one of the Bible schools there or one of the colleges contacted me today as well and is going to be there. So we're looking forward to working with him. In addition, we have another gentleman who is not a member of the church, but he is a preacher. And so we're going to take him with us as well and try to help him along the way in terms of his understanding and learning in everything that we do. And so it looks like a very, you know, very, very exciting week that's planned for that. I know it's, you know, it's not going to be as easy as it sounds because, you know, we're going to be in some rural areas. We're going to go to, you know, some communities where they don't have a church and with the possibility of doing so. And, of course, if we do establish anything, there are preachers waiting to take the assignments who are coming out of the preaching school. So some young men who are ready to do that. And so that is really exciting. And then after we leave there, the morning of the 5th, we will be in Accra. And just basically doing a little, just sightseeing for the most part in preparation for our upcoming debate. And this debate is going to be, and I don't know if I'll pronounce this correctly, but the N-So-Am Church of Christ, which is one of the largest churches in Accra, so I'm told. And I did see a picture of it on the internet. It's 3 stories high, and
wow.
it was jam-packed full for their Sunday service, and it looks like it's going to be quite an event. They say that it will possibly be televised throughout Ghana, and that it will also be live streamed on Facebook. The proposition, and I still don't have clear propositions. I've got them, but I can't remember them. But I know that basically he's going to affirm that the judgment occurred at the end of time, and I will be negating that. And, of course, I will be affirming that the judgment occurred in connection with the fall of Jerusalem in 70 A.D., and he will be negating that. There will be 2 nights of debating with 2-hour sessions, and I don't know what the protocol of the speeches are going to be, how long they are, or anything. I haven't heard that. I just found out the name of the church location today, and I'm awaiting somewhere around it'll probably be the 29th or the 30th before I get any further details, because he's out of town or something and is going to come in. But he said, don't worry about it. We've done this before. We're going to have it all together. So somewhere around the 30th or the 1st of October, I will learn precisely, what the protocol is going to be. I know that Raymond is going to be there. Solomon is going to be there. And they did say they would at least help out with some accommodations, at least for the 2 days of the debate, because they challenged us to debate. And so that's what that looks like. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to participate in something like that. And I just hope that everything goes well as far as that goes. But in terms of the evangelism, we've got that work that's going to take place in a town that's about 45 minutes outside of Accra. And then, of course, the work in Accra. And then eventually we move on to Cape Coast, where we are working with Solomon and the good work that they're doing there. And we'll be involved both in practical life experience and training, et cetera, as well as in the ministry, and all of that is working together. So it looks like it's going to be a pretty busy trip, pretty exciting trip. We're going to be there for a month. Pray for us. We hope that we can survive on what we have. We're going to do our very best and to be as frugal as possible, but and just hopeful that everything is going to be just fine. So that's what's going on in my world. I guess, that's kind of enough to have on your plate at one single time. And I can't think of anything else because I've just been busy, just rolled into the house a few minutes ago. But that's kind of what's happening. And so we're grateful. And I do want to say that I am extremely thankful and grateful to all of those who did support. And we thank J-Don Publications, the Preterist Research Institute, Don Preston and Jan, who also made a contribution to our efforts to go, and also with some books, much needed books. So we'll have some literature to pass out as well. And he did that on the first trip. And so we appreciate and admire him very much for that. Thank you.
You're certainly welcome. And I'll have a box mailed out to you in the morning via UPS or FedEx, whichever.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, I'll be putting that box together very first thing in the morning. So I sat here and I was just thrilled with the report that you gave. And of course, you and I had talked about the debate before we came on air. And to say that is an exciting opportunity is a humongous understatement. I mean, I'm really, really, really sure that the fellow that challenged you, the minister from the Church of Christ there that challenged you to debate this subject has no earthly idea what he's getting himself into. I'm just, I know you well enough. And I have confidence in your abilities enough, and I certainly have confidence in the truth of God's Word enough to know that he probably has no earthly idea what he is going to encounter. And if I could give an analogy, when I went to Salt Lake City some few years ago, a local Presbyterian minister saw the advertisement. He contacted the sponsors, the people that had invited me out there to speak, and he issued a challenge for me to debate him. I'd never heard of the guy, but my sponsor told me that this guy just perceives himself to be the greatest debater, the greatest scholar, the greatest theologian in all the world, and that he very often challenges, anybody and everybody to debate. And so they contacted me and asked me if I'd be willing to debate him. And I said, well, what can you tell me about him? And they told me, and I said, well, sure, be glad to debate him. And I can tell you this, that guy had no clue what he was getting himself into. All he knew was what he had heard about this heresy of preterism. And I will be surprised if the minister that you're going to debate knows much more about it than that also. And so I'm so eager. I'm so excited. I hope that you will send me a text, an email, something to let me know when it will be available on Facebook so that I can watch it, because this promises to be really, really good. It's such an exciting opportunity for you, such an exciting opportunity for the kingdom and for God's word to be spread. And so you will certainly be in my prayers, and I know that you'll be in the prayers of all of those who are listening as well. So all that I can say is Godspeed to you, and blessings on you and Leora as you're over there. Being gone a month is going to be very, very tiring on you, and yet it will be exhilarating, it will be thrilling, it will be rewarding, and you'll probably sleep for a week when you come back.
That's probably true. That's probably true. Well, just remember that the time difference is about 5 hours. Now, I don't know if we're going to experience this daylight savings time change. No, the daylight savings time change while I'm there. I think that happens in October, doesn't it? But I think so, yeah. I don't know if it happens before the 9th or the 10th, so I think it's after that time. But nevertheless, just keep that in mind. So if the discussion is somewhere around 7 p.m. their time, that means it's around, 1 o'clock our time?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So that's a good time here in the States to be watching it, because it'll be in the daytime. So that's good.
Yeah, that'll be very great. Excellent. All right. Well, so that's exciting stuff. It really is. But we got to get into some study of the Messianic temple. We have been focusing on Ezekiel 40 to 47. And last week, as we closed out, I urged our listeners, and this will be both those who are listening live as well as those who will listen on the archives in the future. And by the way, folks, I'll be doing Two Guys in the Bible, pardon me, by myself, or possibly have a guest on with me during the time that William is gone. William has also been gracious enough to invite me to do his radio program on Sunday mornings, beginning on the 20. What day will that be, William? I've forgotten.
It will be a week from this Sunday.
A week from this Sunday is when I will be on for the very first time. I'm not 100% certain that I'll be able to do the program for him every single Sunday, but he has some programs pre-recorded that they can play if and when I'm not able to be there. But I invite you to join me for that program on Sunday morning between 8 and 9 o'clock. It is a program. It's the Mighty 990, I believe. Is that what it's called, William?
Yes, the Mighty 990, KWAM and 107.9 FM.
And I will see if I can get my webmaster, Alan Morton, to hook that up to where we can do it live on my Facebook page. That should be able to be arranged. I wouldn't have a clue how to do it, But anyway, I'll check with Alan to see if he can do that, and that way it can be aired on my Facebook page. And I'm assuming it will go ahead and be aired on your page as well. All Things Fulfilled. Is that correct?
That is correct. They can actually share it, so it's easy. You know, you just click a share button, and you can post it to your page or any page.
Oh, awesome. Okay, that sounds real good, and I look forward to being able to do that. I appreciate the honor of being asked to step in and fill in for you, and I'll do the very, very best that we can. And again, let's get into Ezekiel chapter 44. As I began to say, as I mentioned a moment ago, I gave an assignment for tonight's program for all of those who are going to be with us, and again, on the archive as well, to give some time reading Ezekiel 43 and 44. Now, we could continue that into 45, but this will be sufficient. And the reason I did that is because in the dispensational paradigm, now there's actually a little bit of division within the dispensational world, but in the dispensational paradigm, and when John Darby came out with his dispensationalism in America, when the Scofield Bible came out, in the notes in the comment section on on Ezekiel, we are told in the Scofield Bible, we're told this, by the way, Thomas Ice, a dispensationalist that I've had 4 debates with. We are told this by virtually all of your most prominent dispensational writers. That's Dwight Pentecost in his massive tome, Things to Come, John Walvoord in his commentaries, Tim LaHaye. Again, most of your noted dispensational authors or speakers all agree that in the dispensational view, in the Messianic temple, in the millennial temple, as they call it, physical animal sacrifices will be restored. Now, I have to tell you, most people, and I will even say this, many dispensationalists, what we can, for lack of better terminology, call the pew packers, and I don't mean to be, I'm not disparaging, I'm just simply saying. And what I mean by this is these are not dispensational people who are well read in dispensational literature, okay? They just hear the preachers talk. They hear the televangelist. And I can tell you this from listening to televangelists, dispensationalists for years, do not spend a lot of time telling their audience about their belief, about part and parcel of dispensationalism that says physical, animal, bloody sacrifices are going to be restored in the millennium. Because let's face it, most believers today are actually quite turned off. Now, there are a number of reasons for this, but they're quite turned off by the very concept of the restoration of bloody animal sacrifices. Now, surely, one of the reasons that why an awful lot of people are turned off by that concept is because certainly in America, the concept of killing animals as a sacrifice is something that is totally foreign to the American psyche. Now, what's interesting is that there's some, quote, Christian groups, unquote, who are claiming to return to Torah. And I had a debate with one of them on the internet a couple of years ago now. And they are practicing animal sacrifices. Now, this guy is from Huntsville, Arkansas, which is part of my old stomping grounds. It's just east of Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is where I grew up. Pardon me. But they observe Sabbath. They observe the animal sacrifices. They observe the feast days. They do the whole thing. And there's a growing movement called the Hebrew Roots movement. And they impose observation of animal sacrifices. And like I said, to an awful lot of people, that very concept is pretty abhorrent. They find it objectionable. And yet they are told this is God's will. And so, since it's God's will, hey, we've got to do this. And so they submit, even though they find it abhorrent. Now, another reason that many, many people find the idea of physical animal sacrifices being restored is because there are a number of people out there who have at least a passing knowledge. And I use that term, they at least have a passing knowledge of the fact that Christ's sacrifice was a one-time for all time sacrifice, and that his sacrifice is totally efficacious, it's totally effective, and because his sacrifice is perfectly acceptable to God, because it is a perfect sacrifice, there is no more need for physical, bloody sacrifices. So when they get into a real study of the law, and when their religious leaders tell them the law commanded animal sacrifices, and not one jot or one tittle of the law would pass until it was all fulfilled, heaven and earth would not pass away until the law was all fulfilled. Heaven and earth is still here, therefore the law is completely valid. Every iota, every jot, every tittle of the law remains valid. And not only that argument is given, but let's remember, in the Messianic temple, and they call themselves Messianic Jews, they call themselves Messianic Christians, they tell us, okay, we are in the kingdom of Christ now, but look at how Ezekiel 43 and 45 describes the worship of the Lord in this kingdom, in this Messianic kingdom of Christ. There are bloody animal sacrifices. And you know, William, the young man that I debated right there in Memphis several years ago, Michael Budd was his name. He accepted that argument of bloody animal sacrifices being restored. He believed that we ought to practice circumcision. And
yes,
so,
I remember that.
Folks, if you think, now, let's face it, this is a peripheral view. It's not mainstream. It's not a dominant view, but it is one that attracts a certain amount of believers. And after all, if the opponents of covenant eschatology are right when they argue against us, as we appeal to Matthew 5:17 and 18, and when we quote Jesus' verbatim words, do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. And verily I say unto you, until heaven and earth passes away, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law until it's all fulfilled. Well, they tell us we're wrong, because they tell us, and on the Facebook page entitled As It Is Written, which is a Church of Christ Facebook page, anyone's welcome to attend or welcome to join, however. There's a minister that has been posting on there. His name's Shane Fisher. He has been asked over and over and over again to identify what is heaven and earth. Jesus said had to pass away before the law could pass away. And his response is the law passed away at the cross. Well, that doesn't answer the question. What is heaven and earth in Matthew 5:17 and 18? You're just affirming, all you're doing is affirming that the law has passed. Well, if the law has passed, then of absolute logical necessity, heaven and earth has passed away. So what is the heaven and earth that passed away? And he refuses to answer. Absolutely, adamantly refuses to answer. And listen, this fella, Shane Fisher, and those just like him, those who hold the position that you and I once held when we were still within the confines of the Churches of Christ Fellowship, they've got a problem. And the more we encounter them, the more, let me see, how should I express this? The more creative they get in their attempts to argue away Matthew 5:17 and 18. William, did you read any of my exchange with Shane Fisher last week and the week before?
Yes, I did read some of the exchanges.
Okay. Well, then you know the fact that the position that he took absolutely demands that he's a Sabbatarian. And by the way, he's dropped completely out of that discussion once I posted that argumentation. He's literally disappeared. I haven't seen or heard from him since. He knew he knew he was trapped, and there was no doubt about it. Now, he's probably conferring with good old Howard Denham to try to come up with some kind of an argument, but it won't do any good. But are still there in the text. They will not go away. All that you can do is try to deny them or try to distort them. But when you do that, and when someone points out to you how you are distorting what the text actually says, sooner or later, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to face up to the truth, or you're just going to simply disappear. Or you may start calling names, which we have plenty of going on, from different circles that is thrown at us. So anyway, I'm saying all of that to help us to focus on the issue of Ezekiel 43 and 44. Now, if you'll notice in Ezekiel 43, let me just read verse 19 and following. The Lord has just described the altar of burnt offering, and it's an altar who has a hearth that's 12 cubits long, which is about 18 feet long, 12 wide, which is 18 feet wide, and it's a square at its four corners. But anyway, he says, verse 18, he said to me, Son of man, thus says the Lord God, these are the ordinances for the altar on the day when it is made for sacrificing burnt offerings on it, and for sprinkling blood on it. You shall give a young bull for a sin offering to the priests, the Levites, who are the seed of Zadok, who approach me to minister to me, says the Lord God. You shall take some of the blood and put it on the four horns of the altar, on the four corners of the ledge, and on the rim around it. Thus you shall cleanse it and make atonement for it. Then you shall also take the bull of the sin offering and burn it on the appointed place of the temple outside the sanctuary. And on the second day you shall offer a kid of the goats without blemish for a sin offering, and they shall cleanse the altar as they cleanse it with the bull. Pardon me. When you have finished cleansing it, you shall offer a young bull without blemish and a ram from the flock without blemish. When you offer them before the Lord, the priest shall throw salt on them. They will offer them as a burnt offering to the Lord. Every day for 7 days you shall prepare a goat for a sin offering. They shall also prepare a young bull and a ram from the flock, both without blemish. 7 days they shall make atonement for the altar and purify it, and so consecrate it. When these days are over, it shall be 8th day and thereafter that the priest shall offer your burnt offerings and your peace offerings on the altar, and I will accept you, says the Lord God. Now, I've had some debates with dispensationalists down through the years when they have been confronted with the fact that here in Ezekiel 43, 44, 45, the sacrifices are specifically mandated. The dispensationalists have answered and said, well, yes, animal sacrifices will be restored in the millennium. There's no doubt about that. And as a matter of fact, they're building the altar in Jerusalem. They've got all of the utensils ready. They're cleansing the priest. They're getting ready to rebuild the temple, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, okay. So they're going through all this preparation to build a temple, Messianic temple. But that temple, the first temple that's got to be built, if you remember, ladies and gentlemen, we have shared with you on this program that in the dispensational paradigm, the millennial temple is not the next temple. The next temple in the dispensational world is, for lack of better terminology, the man of sin temple. Because in the dispensational view, in their narrative, very, very soon, and by the way, William, this COVID has the folks on YouTube absolutely on fire, predicting that the rapture is just around the corner. Any day now. And, of course, what's interesting about that, William, is on the one hand, men like Thomas Ice, Tim LaHaye, John Walbert, they all told us that the rapture is a signless event. What are dispensationalists doing right now? They're telling us, the COVID is a sign of the end. Wait a minute. Did you just tell me there are no signs of the end? And now you're telling me a COVID is a sign of the end? I mean, the inconsistencies in the dispensational world are absolutely profound. They're endemic, and they are, I'll use a common term of the day, they are pandemic. They're everywhere. And so when you start trying to pin them down and you say, okay, look, in the dispensational thought world, we're supposed to have the rapture. And when the church is taken off of the earth, all of a sudden, the man of sin appears. And he's manifested. But he causes Israel to sign a peace treaty. And that peace treaty allows Israel to rebuild the temple. Now think about this, folks. The very next temple that's to be built in Jerusalem, according to dispensationalism, is a temple that is authorized by the man of sin. I don't know if that soaks into a lot of people or not. I know it certainly does not seem to soak into an awful lot of dispensationalists, because they get all excited about the end. And when you say, why are you excited about the rapture, when the rapture means one thing: the man of sin is in charge, and the temple will be built by him or at his authority. And 3.5 years after that temple is built, guess what, folks? He's going to turn against the Jews, and he's going to kill 3/5 of the Jews on the earth. Now, I don't know about you, but that just doesn't strike me as a whole lot of good news. I mean, it's just not good news. And yet, I sat in the audience in Florida several years ago, and I heard a dispensational preacher say, you know what I'm looking forward to, ladies and gentlemen? I'm looking forward to the Lord's return, in which 3/5 of the world's population will be destroyed, in which the Lord will himself personally, with his own feet, trample out the blood of so many people that the blood will flow up to the horses' bridles. And I get to watch. And I sit there with a friend of mine, and he and I turned to each other, and it was like, this is the gospel? A man that rejoices in his belief that he gets to watch Jesus personally, with his own 2 feet, kill so many people that blood is stirrup deep on horses. I'm a bridle deep. Excuse me. It's unfathomable to me to think that someone could have such a morbid sense of what I suppose he would call justice, as to desire such a thing. But of course, the point that I'm trying to make right here is that in that dispensational view, what do you have? The very next temple is the man of sin temple. It's the temple authorized by the man of sin. And guess what? In the millennial paradigm, that temple is then destroyed at the end or near the end of the Great Tribulation period. And then when the Lord comes the second time, guess what happens, folks? Jesus himself personally builds the temple of Ezekiel 40 and following. So there are actually technically two more temples in our future in the dispensational view, in their doctrine. And by the way, Thomas Ice is on record in his book entitled Prophecy Watch that he did with Timothy DeMee. He says that during the 7-year during the 7-year tribulation period, the traditional Jewish sacrifices are restored. Well, what are the traditional Jewish sacrifices, folks? They are bloody animal sacrifices. That's what they are. Now, how anyone could say they believe that is good news, I'm literally I'm literally at a loss of words. I just don't know how anyone could contemplate the restoration of bloody animal sacrifices. William, doesn't Hebrews chapter 10 say something very, very profound about God's attitude toward bloody animal sacrifices?
It's absolutely true, especially in Hebrews 10 and verse 5 specifically, but perhaps you were looking at 1 through 5. But he tells you it was not possible that the blood of bulls and goats could take away sin in verse 4, and therefore he said when he came into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared before me. So in burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, you had no pleasure.
So, have to excuse me, folks, our allergy pollen count is off the scale here in southern Oklahoma. I've been having to take Claritin. I've been having to take Mucinex. I've been having to take just, everything possible. And unfortunately, as is my history, when I start this stuff, it always settles in my throat. And so every morning over the last week, I go to the office, and before I can ever even
Thank you for joining the Two Guys in a Bible radio broadcast. On behalf of Dunn Preston and myself.
What?
I don't know what happened, but anyway, we're good.
Well, if I offended you by what I was saying here.
No, not at all.
I'm thinking, wait a minute, my clock says 6:44. I thought, well, William was through with that, I guess. So anyway, apologizing for the trouble I'm having with my throat. It is problematic. But these passages here in Hebrews chapter 10, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, how much clearer could they be? When the Lord sent his Son into this world, he just specifically said, well, number one, the blood of bulls and goats can never take away sin, Hebrews chapter 10, 1 and 2. In the offering of the sacrifices of the blood of bulls and goats, he said there is a remembrance made of sin every year. You know, William, I remember as a very young man, I would hear Church of Christ preachers saying, well, on the Day of Atonement, what the Lord did, the Lord always rolled their sins forward. And I kept looking for that and looking for it and looking for it. And I just couldn't find that. Couldn't find that concept. What I did find was that every year on Yom Kippur, there was a remembrance of their sin. Now, folks, that's a frightening thing. And that's one of the reasons why, by the way, the Jews did look with a great deal of trepidation and fear to the Day of Atonement. It's one of the reasons why they were so fearful when the high priest went into the most holy place. If he stayed too long, they were fearful that the sacrifice had not been accepted and that God, in remembering their sins, would destroy them. And so the language here of Hebrews chapter 10 is so critically important to understand as we're looking at this language of Ezekiel, that in this Messianic temple, as the dispensationalists like to call it, they demand physical animal sacrifices. And yet the Lord said, animal sacrifices do not take away sin. So the dispensationalists are confronted with a very troubling reality. On the one hand, the Lord says, in offerings and burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, I have had no pleasure, but a body you have prepared for me. So the Lord is more than explicit. He's more than emphatic, more than clear. God never had pleasure in animal sacrifices. Period. Now, did he demand them from the very beginning? Yes, he did. That's not the point. The fact that he demanded them does not mean that he was well pleased with them or that it was his ultimate desire. He demanded those animal sacrifices in order to prepare people for understanding what was coming. Those animal sacrifices were typological. They were foreshadowings of the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And that's why Christ, for instance, is called our Passover. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Just like the Passover was a literal physical lamb that was slain, a lamb without spot, without blemish, etc., and Christ had no sin. And so here is Christ, who is the Passover. He is the antitypical fulfillment of that. But whereas those sacrifices could never, ever take away sin, the offering of Christ, as Hebrews chapter 10 goes ahead to say, this is my covenant with them when I take away their sin. For by one offering he is sanctified forever those who are perfect, or is perfected forever those who are sanctified. And so there's no question whatsoever that the writer sets forth Jesus in Hebrews chapter 10 as the absolute, ultimate, final, one-time, for all-time sacrifice. So, since Jesus is the absolute, perfect, one-time, for all-time, effective sacrifice, then why in the world would Yahweh reestablish the offering of physical animal sacrifices, which he had never had pleasure in? And so, once again, the dispensationalists, aware of the problem, aware of the fact that the Lord said he never had pleasure in the physical animal sacrifices, and aware of the fact that their take on Ezekiel 43 and following demands physical sacrifices, they say, well, you see, the solution to it is this. The solution to it is that those sacrifices depicted in the Messianic millennial temple in Ezekiel 43 and following are not going to be for atonement. They are going to be as a memorial, as a reminder, as a visible reminder, as a visible, constant reminder of the sacrifice that Jesus has made for us. And you're going, we have a memorial of the sacrifice of Christ. It's called the Lord's Supper. And so the very idea that we have to have animal sacrifices, which God never, ever desired, but we've got to have them to memorialize the death of Jesus, just doesn't work. And not only that, folks, and this is what I never will forget in my very first formal public debate. I went over this material. My opponent, his name is Don Deal, Shawnee, Oklahoma, and he made the argument that animal sacrifices will be restored in the millennium, and I responded with some of the things that I just went over. And he said, well, the sacrifices in the millennium are going to be for memorials. They're not going to be for atonement. Well, unfortunately, right here in Ezekiel 43, 44, and 45, the Lord specifically, clearly, emphatically says those sacrifices would be made for the atonement. I mean, after all, right here in Ezekiel 43, he uses the word atonement twice. They'll make atonement for the altar. They'll make atonement for the priest. And then he says, okay, 7 days you shall make atonement for the altar and purify it and so consecrate it. Now notice what happens next. Okay, verse 27. When these days are over, what days are over? The making of atonement for the altar. The priest shall offer your burnt offerings and your peace offerings on the altar, and I will accept you. So the offering of bloody animal sacrifices was not only to make atonement for the altar, but the making of the atonement of the altar was absolutely necessary for the Lord to accept Israel. Well, that means that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, that the sacrifices, guess what, were for an atonement for the people. You got to have a sacrifice for the atonement in order for the Lord to accept the people. Once the sacrifices for the altar are accepted, then and only then can the people be accepted. In chapter 45, verse 15, it says, one lamb shall be given from a flock of 200 from the rich pastures of Israel. These shall be for grain offerings, burnt offerings, and peace offerings to make atonement for them. And that's the people. That's the prince. That's the leader. And so what we have in Ezekiel are the very specific words. These are not vague. They can't be misunderstood. These are sacrifices that would be for the altar, for the temple, and for the people, to make atonement for them. And thus the dispensational argument that, well, yes, in the millennium, there will be sacrifices, but they will not be to make atonement, because Jesus has already made the atonement, but they'll be for memorial. You know, here's the amazing thing. Not one time in Ezekiel 40 through 47 are the sacrifices ever called a memorial. Not once. They are never said to be done in remembrance. Not once. Every single time, the purpose for those sacrifices is given, it would be to make the atonement. I just don't know how much clearer words could be than this. I know in that very first public debate that I mentioned a few moments ago, when I pointed out, and William, that's in the days before I even discovered PowerPoint, no question about it. I had handmade charts, and I had a friend of mine running the overhead projector and my chart book. My chart book had almost 1,000 charts in it, and that was in 1983, somewhere along in there. So I had them highly organized, but nonetheless, I kept my chart man going. I can assure you of that. But when I presented the charts with the actual wording of the text from Ezekiel 43, from Ezekiel 45, that the sacrifices were to make the atonement for the altar, for the people, for the temple. Pardon me. My opponent completely and totally abandoned his argument on the millennial temple. Never said another word about it. And that's how telling this language is. And look, folks, if you're going to take the position that we're talking about a literal physical temple in the millennium at some point of time, supposedly in our very near future, if you're going to take the temple literal, if you're going to make the priesthood literal and physical, then you've got to make the sacrifices to be literal and physical. And in that case, you've got to answer the question. Number one, why would God restore bloody animal sacrifices? Why? And William, I've studied this issue for years and years and years. I have yet to come up with a single plausible reason or justification or even an excuse for why God would choose to restore physical animal sacrifices. Have you ever heard anything that came remotely close to offering a plausible explanation for why God would restore the animal sacrifices?
None. I haven't heard a single one of a reason why he would do that, especially in light of the fact that Christ is the sacrifice for sin. So I just can't imagine. And no, I don't recall anybody coming up with anything that sounded plausible to me as a reason to reinstitute them.
Yeah. Well, it has always struck me as one of those arguments. And as a matter of fact, I wrote a tract years and years and years ago, while I was still at Shawnee. As a matter of fact, it was published by Star Publishing for a short period of time. They sold out, and for some reason or other, did not reprint it. But I wrote a tract on this very subject, on the restoration of the temple and what it would mean if the temple were restored, what it would mean in regard to a restored Levitical priesthood. Well, if the Levitical priesthood is restored, Christ can't be the priest. What would it mean for the temple? Well, if the temple is rebuilt, then the physical temple of Jerusalem should take precedent over the spiritual temple of Christ, because the spiritual temple of Christ replaced the Old Covenant physical temple in AD 70. What would it mean for the sacrifices if the physical sacrifices are restored? And on and on and on it goes. I just systematically went down the different elements, the different practices that were under the Old Covenant in the temple, and the implications of restoring that kind of a system. And I want to tell you, that doctrine impugns the gospel of Christ. And folks, we are out of time here. William, I just want to say again, Godspeed to you in your travels this upcoming, in this upcoming week. Give my love to Leora, and you two be safe. We wish you the most of success as possible. God bless you in the debate there, and God bless you as you share the gospel of Jesus Christ with the folks in Ghana. And folks, with that, I'm going to say good night and God bless.
Thank you for joining the Two Guys in a Bible radio broadcast. On behalf of Dunn Preston and myself, we'd like to say have a very pleasant day and may God bless. Until next time, We'll see you on Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust.